Hello, friends. November 30th, 2021. A mass shooting occurred at Oxford High School in the Detroit exurb of Oxford Township, Michigan, United States. Ethan Robert Crumbley, who is only 15, armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, murdered 4 students and injured 7 people, including a teacher. The question is that how he got that 9mm semi-automatic handgun without being caught by security. Similarly, if we look at the recent case, Matthew Crooks, who tried to assassinate former President Trump. He also had an AR-15 rifle. The same question arises here. The answer is that, in America, some states allow open carry of rifles by those over and even under 18. Every year, 40,000 people die in America due to gun violence. The reason behind all this killing and violence is the weapons industry. And not only America, but China, Russia, Israel, India, and Pakistan all are involved in this dark business. Today, we are exposing the dark business of the weapon industry.
Out of the sentencing of Ethan Crumbley, the convicted shooter in the Oxford High School shooting in...
Away for 2 suspects accused in a shooting in the Bronx. Surveillance video shows them draw their weapons and fire at a man wearing a red jacket. This happened back on October.
Let's start with a most popular example, or we can say the Israel-Palestine war. The war started about a whole year ago. Over 40,000 lives have been lost already. Even 3 days ago, Hamas chief have been assassinated by Israel. So surprisingly amidst this tragedy, certain entities are benefiting significantly. American weapons manufacturers. Since the war began, the stocks of these companies have surged by $30 billion. The 2 major defense contractors in America, Raytheon and General Dynamics, have unabashedly informed investors that the war in Israel would be financially advantageous. Other arms manufacturers like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman have experienced substantial stock gains over the past 3 years. Lockheed Martin produces F-35 Lightning II fighter jets used by Israel, as well as Black Hawk helicopters. Northrop Grumman produces submarines and combat vehicles. Israel signed a $3 billion deal in July to buy these F-35 fighter jets. One might wonder about the source of Israel's substantial military budget. Look at this news article. In September 2016, during President Obama's tenure, the U.S. and Israel signed a $38 billion deal. As per this deal, the U.S. provides military equipment worth $3.8 billion to Israel annually. Consequently, a staggering 92% of Israel's imported weapons now originate from one country, the United States of America. But why does this matter? A country buying weapons from an ally country would not seem suspicious. But the peculiarity of this situation is that the weapons industry doesn't care about any alliances. The weapons industry has only one objective: earning maximum profit. This year, in January, the U.S. State Department announced a record-breaking $205 billion in weapons sales to various countries worldwide in the latest fiscal year. Weapons worth more than $200 billion were sold in a year by only one country, marking a 49% increase from the previous year. These weapons went to 58 different countries, including not only Israel but also several Arab nations such as Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Iraq. Does selling these weapons make the world a safer place or unsafe? The issue extends beyond the United States. Last year, Israel also set a record in weapons sales, surpassing $12 billion. This substantial figure includes sales of drones, missiles, rockets, and air defense systems. Notably, $3 billion, or the percent $12 billion, that is, 24% of this total export was to Arab countries. Israel ranks as the 10th largest arms exporter globally, with the top 4 positions occupied by the United States, Russia, France, and China. The United Kingdom holds the 7th position. What distinguishes these 5 countries is their status as permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. A striking fact is that combining their weapon sales constitutes over 75% of global arms exports. After this fact comes to light, how can one expect that the United Nations would adopt a resolution to curtail arms exports globally? In May of this year, Oxfam International's head of New York office highlighted that 4 out of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council are the world's leading arms sellers. These weapons fuel conflicts worldwide. This is truly hypocritical, complicit, and immoral. Apart from them, Germany, Italy, and South Korea also feature among the top 10 arms exporters. The weapons industry isn't bothered by what's right and what's wrong, who is an ally and who is not. This is evident in several examples. While many consider Russia a close friend to India, it is also one of the top 3 arms exporters to Pakistan. Between 2017 and 2021, China was the #1 weapons supplier to Pakistan, followed by Sweden and Russia. Look at this report from 2021. Russia pledged to provide more weapons to Pakistan, despite India's discomfort. Turning to weapon imports, the top countries importing weapons are on this list of top 10 largest arms importers. India is at #1, followed by countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar. However, what's interesting here is that in positions 5th, 7th, and 10th reveal an intriguing dynamic with China, South Korea, and America. This suggests a complex game of buying and selling weapons on the global stage, seemingly unaffected by a country's foreign policy. In the realm of geopolitics, the U.S. aligns with Israel, while Russia and China form a separate bloc. Even in the current crisis, these two sides are evident. Russian President Putin's opinion on the Israel-Palestine war is that it should be seen as a failure of the U.S. policy, asserting that the U.S. neglects the well-being of Palestinians. China, too, condemns Israel's actions in Gaza, characterizing them as beyond self-defense. This might create the impression of a divide, with the U.S., Europe, and Israel on one side, and China and Russia on the other. However, when it comes to weapon exports, these seemingly opposing nations find themselves on the same side. These countries collectively export the most weapons globally. By now, you might be thinking that these countries are truly terrible, that we should be protesting the countries exporting weapons worldwide. But if you are thinking so, you are missing the point. A nation is formed by its citizens. Americans aren't bad. Neither are Russians, Israelis, or Chinese citizens. The citizens aren't actually consulted. The major players in this deadly weapons mafia are not everyday Americans, Russians, Israelis, or Chinese citizens. Ordinary people in these nations don't reap the benefits of arms sales. Instead, private weapons manufacturers are the ones raking in profits. That's right. Almost all of the weapons sold globally by these countries aren't sold by the governments, rather they're sold by private capitalists. Look at this list. The top 100 weapons companies. Out of the top 100 companies, only a handful are government-owned, such as Israel Aerospace Industries or Aviation Industry Corporation of China. Disregarding these exceptions, the majority are private entities. Lockheed Martin, an American company, holds the top spot, followed by Northrop Grumman in 3rd place. In fact, 51 of the companies on the list are American. What does this mean? The massive profits generated from the sale of weapons flow into the coffers of these private companies. Ironically, the money used to purchase these weapons often comes from taxpayers, as governments fund these acquisitions. Many nations procure weapons either from private companies in their country or, when dealing with other countries, they engage with private entities of that country. Hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money are funneled into these companies. These funds are then utilized to purchase weapons, which inevitably end up being used in conflicts that affect ordinary people. A report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute in April this year revealed that India's military spending stands at $81.4 billion, ranking it 4th globally in 2022. At the forefront of military expenditures is America with $877 billion, followed by China at $292 billion, and Russia at $86.4 billion. The top 10 list also features the UK and France, all 5 permanent members of the United Nations. Security Council are on this list too. Why don't these 5 nations collectively decide to cease the wasteful spending on weapons? A united commitment to refrain from attacking one another could be a transformative step to halt the financial drain on military budgets. However, the irony lies in the fact that the primary casualties of the weapons industry are often the American citizens. The frequency of mass shootings in America is alarmingly higher than any other country. This year alone, till mid-September, over 500 mass shootings occurred, with a tragic impact on children, making school shootings a distressingly common phrase in America. In 2021-2022, more than 327 school shootings took place in American schools. This is a direct result of the lax regulation surrounding gun ownership in America, unlike in other countries where disputes are settled with fists and kicks. But in America, people do not hesitate to fire guns, only because of the fact that the American laws favor gun ownership. If the sale of weapons were prohibited, no one would be allowed to sell weapons. Then these gun shootings would stop eventually. But how would the weapon manufacturers benefit then? This is why dozens of children lose their lives in America every year. Politicians are often seen shedding tears, but the gun trade isn't affected. Lastly, I think these weapons industries have benefits from war and violence. In reality, during wars, it's the common people who end up fighting each other, not the politicians themselves. An example from 2014 highlights this. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's son had started his mandatory 3-year army service. However, this turned out to be fake news, misleading the public into thinking his son was directly involved in the conflict. Critics have rightfully condemned him for sending his son to enjoy life at some American beach, while sending ordinary citizens to fight. These issues should prompt the media to raise their voices and provide critical coverage. Unfortunately, in many countries, the media is often so corrupt that it looks to benefit from wars, eagerly chasing the prospect of increased TRP by talking about the latest conflict, especially those TV channels aligned with government's interest. They find it convenient to neglect the day-to-day issues faced by the common people and focus solely on war-related news. This highlights a stark truth about the world's weapons industry, an industry whose existence would be jeopardized if global wars were to cease. Perhaps this is why it is beneficial to continue wars, to ensure the continuous flow of money. If you found this video informative, then hit the subscribe button because it takes a lot of effort to make such videos. Moreover, you can also like the video and share it with your friends. Please do support, because I have to manage this channel with my schoolwork, and also stay happy.